In this tutorial, we're going to go over how to create a drawing in Fusion 360. The part that we're going to be using is the Titan 92L. Let's first take a look at the Titans of CNC drawing, as we are going to be replicating this. In our upper left-hand corner, we have our front view, and following the rules of third angle projection, we have our right-handed view coming off of it. And then to the bottom right of it, we have an isometric view, giving us further clarification of what the part's supposed to look like. Coming back to our front view, we have these section lines that are kind of dividing this part into half. And the direction of the arrowheads are pointing to the area that it's going to clip away. And so we are going to be looking at this area on the top of our part. And then when it drops it down over here, and this becomes our section bottom view. If you look closely here, we have this construction circle that's kind of driving the geometry of this web here. And then we have all of our measurements stated on our bottom view. Let's jump over to Fusion 360 and take a look at how we're going to create this drawing. I'm over here in Fusion 360. Now I already have the Titan 92 up. The biggest issue that we're going to have is if you look at our view cube, when I drew this part, and the vast majority of you should have drawn it this way, is the z-axis is going up, the x-axis is pointing to the right, and the y-axis is going forward. This is following the left-handed rule. Well, the issue is when I want this part to appear in my drawing, this perspective is actually the front view. And if you look at my view cube over here, it says that this is the right view. Well, I need to change this first. So very first thing that we are going to do, because we're going to kill two birds with one stone here, is I'm going to turn my sketch on that we use to revolve this part. This is important because we need this sketch geometry for our circle that will appear on our drawing. Very first thing that I want is I want this sketch to appear at the 3 o'clock position. So I'm going to kind of orbit my part around until I get it at the 3 o'clock position there. And notice in my view cube it says this is the right hand side. So I'm going to click right in the center of our view cube here. That way it kind of orients our part correctly. Now that our part is nice and oriented, we're going to go up to where this little house is. We're going to right click on it, and we are going to set the current view as our front view. Notice the orientation of our view cube has changed now, and Fusion 360 is now recognizing this as our front view. Now that this is our front view, what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on the very top of our part. To do so, we need to go to Construct and down to Tangent Plane. We're going to click on the top of our part here, and we see this construction plane appear. We are going to choose a reference plane. The reference plane is actually going to be our sketch. But notice when I click on this, our construction plane jumps down to the bottom. That's okay. We're going to set our angle at 180 degrees, and that will flip our construction plane back onto the top of our part. Afterwards, let's press OK in the pop-up window. And now we have our construction plane. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the visibility of our body off. And I'm going to project some geometry from our original sketch onto our construction plane. P on the keyboard, and it's asking us to create a sketch. Where do you want to create the sketch on? Well, I'm going to create it on this construction plane by left clicking on it. The two components that we need out of our sketch here is this little arc, and then the center of this arc here, which is this point. Afterwards, we're going to press OK. And then we're going to turn sketch number 1 off, and you can actually see the geometry I chose. So we have this arc here, and then the center location of that arc. We're going to create a circle that follows that geometry, so C on the keyboard. We're going to snap the center of our circle to that point, and then snap the perimeter of our circle to the point up here where our arc resides. By doing so, our circle is fully defined, and you can tell this by the circle being black in color. We're going to right click and press OK, and then finish our sketch. Now that we have our circle in place, if we turn our body back on, you'll notice that this circle that we just created is on the top of our part. With that in mind, imagine us taking half of this circle, or half of our part, and the half that we're going to be looking at is the top section. Well, that top section will have that circle in place. Now that we have our circle in place, we're going to save our part, and we're going to transfer over into our drawing workspace. We're going to go to Design and down to Drawing from Design. In our pop-up window, it's asking, do you want everything in this modeling workspace to be in your drawing? Yes, we do. We are creating a new drawing here. And the template that we are going to be using is the template that we created in a previous video on how to create a title block template. And then press OK. Very first thing that Fusion 360 is trying to do is it's trying to land our front view. We're going to come over to our pop-up window, and we're going to change the style to just visible edges. And I'm going to increase our scale a little bit. If you click inside this edit window here, you can actually type in a custom scale. The scale that we are going to be using on this part is 3:1. And then I'm going to land my front view in our upper left-hand corner, and then press OK. Now that we have our front view, we're going to come up and add another drawing view. So in our toolbar, we're going to click on Drawing Views and to Projected View. We're going to click on our front view here and drag our mouse over to the right, giving us a right-handed view. Over to the right again, and down will give us an isometric view. After we land our isometric view in, we can press Enter on the keyboard and lock those other two views into place. I'm going to double left click on my isometric view and change it from a wireframe into a shaded with visible edges only, and then close out this pop-up window. Now that we have our 3 views, we need to add our 4th view. Our 4th view is that section view. We're going to go back to our toolbar where it says Drawing Views and down to Section View. We're going to click on our front view here. We're going to kind of snap right to the center here. And notice I'm just kind of gesturing my mouse. I'm not actually clicking on anything yet. I'm going to left click here on one side and then left click on the other side and then press Enter. As soon as I press Enter, it's going to cut that part in half for me. And I'm going to drag my mouse down right about this location. And then press OK. Now that we have our views in place, I need that construction circle that we created in our design workspace to appear. I'm going to come up to my browser tab. I'm going to hit the down caret next to sketches. And I'm going to change the primary visibility next to sketches to on. And then I'm going to turn the visibility of sketch number 9 on also. As soon as I did that, you'll notice that our construction circle appears. We're going to zoom into our section view here, and we're going to start adding in some dimensions. To start adding dimensions to this particular view, we need to add in a center line here. So we're going to go up to geometry and down to center line. We're going to reference off the edges here of our bore. So I'm going to click on both edges. And notice we have this line running exactly down the center of our part. I'm going to zoom into the top of this line. I'm going to right click and press OK. I want the top of this line to line up with the top of my part. So I'm going to click on it. And notice these little grayed out arrowheads appear. I'm going to click on that one arrowhead. And I'm going to snap it over to an endpoint on the top of my part. And then I'm going to drag my mouse back. You'll notice these like purple lines appear. As soon as I see those purple lines intersect, I'm going to left click, locking that into position. Notice now my center line is exactly on the top of my part. From here, I'm going to land my datum location. I'm going to do so using ordinate dimensions. And I'm going to click right at that endpoint where that center line meets the top of our part and drag our mouse straight up and over the top of our construction circle. Our next location that we're going to choose is the endpoint over here on the top of our part. And I'm going to drag this off of our part like so. Before we go any further, I'm going to change the annotation settings on our sheet here. Bottom center is our annotation settings. I'm going to check the box next to display trailing zeros. And then I'm going to change my linear dimension precision to the thousandths column here. Notice when I do so, our 0 has now changed to 3 trailing zeros on both locations. To change this, I'm going to double left click on it and change my primary precision to read just 0. And then close that out. I'm going to repeat that over on this other side, changing our primary precision again. After I've done this, I'm ready to add in my dimensions. I'm going to go back to ordinate dimensions. We're going to start with our horizontal dimensions first. We're going to anchor right off this line coming in from our bore. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to reference off of the end of our extension line from our datum location. That way I can get all of my measurements in alignment. I'm going to shoot down here to the endpoint of this arc that makes up the bottom of that groove. And again, I'm referencing off of the endpoint of our previous extension line. And then lastly, the endpoint on the outside of our part. Again, referencing the previous extension line, so all of my measurements fall in a row. Now that I have my horizontal measurements, I'm going to jump down and add in some vertical measurements the same exact way. I'm going to reference off this edge here that makes up the edge of our groove, gesturing our mouse from that previous extension line. This point here on the other side of the groove, same thing, making sure that all my measurements are in alignment here. Working our way down to the last measurement, like so. I'm going to right click, press OK to cancel that out. I'm going to add some clarification numbers to our measurements here. This particular measurement of 253 thousandths here, I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to click my mouse right behind this bracket and hit the space bar, the division sign, and the space bar again, and I'm going to insert a diameter symbol. That way I know that that particular measurement is actually a circle there. And I'm going to type in the dimension of 505 thousandths. And then enter. So notice now we have a radial measurement and we also have a diameter measurement. I'm going to repeat that over here. Oops. And this time it's 821 thousandths. And then lastly at the 475, and this one needs to be 950 thousandths. So those are just some clarifying numbers. That way we know that those are the radius amounts and then also the diameter amounts. Before we leave our bottom view here, we're going to add in some other dimensions. So D on the keyboard. We're going to click on this construction circle and drag this up. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to click in the bottom of, or the sides of our bore here. And we're going to position that here. And then the edges of our grooves from side to side. And again, these are kind of clarifying numbers here. Just like so. Afterwards, I'm going to right click and press OK. And I'm going to drag these measurements on the outside of my part. This time on the right hand side. I'm going to try my best to get them in alignment here, since we don't have anything over here to snap to. That looks pretty good. Now these particular measurements, I'm going to add in a diameter symbol. So I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to go to the front of the bracket and insert my diameter symbol and close it out. I'm going to do that for the other two measurements the same exact way. Lastly, I'm going to put a little note along with this measurement. This is going to help further clarify that this construction circle is referencing off this web with this little radius here on the tip of it. I'm going to double click on this and put this note in here that circle is for web. So that way we know that this circle is directly driving that web right there. Now our bottom view is all fully defined. Let's move up to our front view. We're going to add in a couple dimensions here. D on the keyboard again. This time we're going to click on the innermost portion of the circle and drag our measurement out. And we're going to click on the outside of our measurement, dragging that measurement out. And that's further clarifying these measurements that were shown in our bottom view. We're going to jump over to our right-handed view. In our right-handed view, while we're still in dimension mode, we're going to come zooming in here. We're going to click on this little radius here and drag that out. I'm going to right click and press OK. This particular radius, there are 4 instances that we see that radius, so I'm going to put a 4x in front of it. And then lastly, we're going to call out the chamfers here. I'm going to use a text with the leader line. And I'm going to click on this angle line here and drag my mouse over. And I'm going to put 8x, because there's 8 chamfers total, 10 thousandths by 45, the degree symbol. Oops. And chamfer. And then close out. So our parts are all dimensioned now in our drawing. We're going to come down to our title block. We're going to update a couple of things in here. We're going to double left click on the lines of our title block. First thing we're going to update is our material. The material that this part is supposed to be made out of is 6061 T6 aluminum. And then we're going to update our revision here, and this is revision A. And then we're going to press OK. Other than that, this drawing is all complete, and this concludes our tutorial on how to create a drawing of the Titan 92L.